Alone at midnight. The shocking text that changed everything. During dinner with my son, the clock ticked loudly in the darkened room, each second echoing a growing sense of dread. It was a typical Thursday, or so it seemed, as David sat across from his son, Jake. The smell of spaghetti mingled with tension, a delicious aroma overshadowed by an unease that tingled in the air. Silence swirled around them, thick and heavy. They had just settled down for dinner when the world was thrown upside down. And it all started with a text message. Jake's eyes flickered towards his dad, excitement tumbling within him as he spoke animatedly about his day at school. But David's mind was elsewhere, tangled in a web of bills and work stress. Suddenly, his phone buzzed like a rattlesnake. He glanced down and his heart dropped. The message glowed ominously against the screen. "We need to talk. It's about Mom." A chill snaked down David's spine. What could this possibly mean? His wife, Sarah, had been gone for a year, yet the shadows of her absence loomed larger than ever. They had grown used to the silence, though it never felt normal. David could feel the tightness in his chest, the air thickening, making it hard to breathe. Jake's laughter turned hollow as he noticed his father's face, the sudden change palpable. "Dad? What is it?" The boy's youthful innocence and worry sunk deep into David's heart. The horror of his thoughts bubbled to the surface, threatening to overwhelm him. "It's nothing, buddy," he lied, his voice shaky. But the weight of those words pressed heavily against his conscience. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows as if nature itself felt the impending doom inside that little house. David's hands trembled as he opened the message, dreading the unknown. As he scrolled, dread mounted. The words blurred together, like a storm cloud darkening the pages of a book. Then came the unexpected: a name he hadn't seen in years. A name that was better left buried. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." "Now let's continue." David's eyes widened. He felt the room spin, reality twisting and contorting. The helicopter of memories buzzed in his mind, slicing through his focus. What did this mean? What had Sarah told someone? The guilt of not knowing sent waves of nausea rippling through him. Jake, sensing something was wrong, leaned in closer, his little face a mask of concern. "Dad, please, talk to me?" The sincerity in his voice trembled like the leaves outside. David was losing grip on normalcy, and the darkness felt undeniable. He felt the air shift and silence fall like a heavy curtain. His phone buzzed again, a cruel taunt as the screen lit up like an emergency siren, urging him to look. The next message blinked at him, a single word that sent his heart racing. "Run." How could everything change so drastically in just one moment? Just as he thought of moving, a loud crash shattered the silence outside, followed by frantic barking from their neighbor's dog. David's gut twisted. Was it a signal or a warning? Questions swirled in his mind like leaves caught in a storm, and as he stared into Jake's anxious eyes, one relentless thought persisted. What were they about to face? In that moment he realized things would never be the same again. The night was just beginning, and an unseen terror awaited them. The air grew heavier, and David's racing heart drowned out the chaotic chorus outside. He needed a plan. The sound of shattering glass shattered his thoughts. He looked up to see Jake's small hands gripping the edge of the table, knuckles white with fear. His son was scared, and that terrified David more than anything. "Jake, we need to go," David whispered, urgency bubbling beneath his calm facade. He couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. As he pushed his chair back, it scraped against the floor like nails on a chalkboard. He felt the walls closeting them, amplifying their impending fate. Outside, sirens wailed, intertwining with the neighbor's dog's frantic yelps. The world beyond their little home seemed more threatening by the second. Something was not right. "Where are we going, Dad?" Jake asked, his voice tremoring. "We just need to get to the car. Now." David's voice was firm, but inside he was a chaotic storm. He grabbed Jake's hand and pulled him toward the door. Just as they reached the threshold, another crash rattled the windows, this one closer, sharper. David froze, stomach tightening. What if someone was coming for them? His mind raced with images of shadowy figures lurking outside, their intentions twisted. "Stay behind me," he instructed, adopting a protective stance as he cautiously opened the door. The chill of the night air flooded in, nearly knocking the breath from his lungs. He urged Jake outside, where the shadows of their neighbors' houses melted into darkness. A distant scream pierced through the chaos, sending fear ricocheting within him. As they made their way across the yard, every rustle in the bushes felt like a threat. "Dad, what is going on?" Jake whimpered, clearly sensing the danger. "Just stick close to me," David murmured, fighting to keep his own panic in check. He needed to be the brave one for Jake's sake. They reached the car, and David fumbled for the keys in his pocket. Just as he was about to unlock the door, he caught sight of a figure darting between the trees, a shadow that moved too quickly and too purposefully. His grip tightened on the keys, knuckles whitening as dread all but engulfed him. "Get in!" he shouted, urgency lifting his voice as he shoved Jake into the back seat, then quickly rounded to the driver's side. He glanced back one more time. The figure was gone. David's chest heaved as he turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, but it felt like a cruel joke amidst all that was happening. Just as he shifted into gear, his phone buzzed violently in his lap. "Not now." He seized it, eyes darting to the screen. It was another message, but this one didn't come from the number he had expected. Confused, he felt a cold sweat break out along his spine. "Get out of there. They're closer than you think." Panic clawed at him. Who was sending these warnings? It took everything in him not to shout. Instead, he put the car in reverse and tore out of the driveway. The road before him twisted into the night, filled with shadows and uncertainty. "Dad!" Jake's voice broke through the silence. "Is Mom coming back?" David clenched his jaw, a lump forming in his throat. He had to protect Jake, nothing else mattered. He wouldn't let his son feel the weight of uncertainties tonight. As they sped into the night, the night air grew thick with tension and unspoken fears. A siren wailed behind them, and David felt a sense of urgency clawing at him again. Where were they headed? But the real question loomed larger, like a dark cloud. Who were they running from? The world outside faded into darkness, but the shadow of the truth clawed closer, threatening to pull them back into chaos. David pressed down on the accelerator, the car racing down the empty street as dread bled into his thoughts. The sirens faded behind them, but the silence was just as unsettling. Every muscle in his body was tense, a raw wire thrumming with anxiety. He risked a glance in the rearview mirror, hoping against hope for a sign of safety. Nothing but darkness stared back. "Dad, where are we going?" Jake's voice punctured the thick silence again. Higher this time, tremors of fear creeping into his words. "I need you to hang on, buddy." Well, David's throat felt tight. How could he protect his son when truth seemed to slip like sand through his fingers? "We'll just keep driving until we find a safe place." Then the phone buzzed once more, vibrating insistently against his leg. David's heart seized. Was it another message? He gulped, knowing he shouldn't check while driving but feeling an overpowering need. "Do you want me to look?" Jake asked, sensing his dad's conflict. They both knew it was dangerous to read texts on the road, but fear clawed at David. He needed clarity. He hesitated, clenching the steering wheel tighter. "I'll check when we stop," he promised, forcing calm into his voice. Yet, their impending doom tasted bitter on his tongue. As they sped past flickering streetlights and darkened houses, a sudden flash caught his eye. A figure stood at the edge of the road, briefly illuminated by the soft glow of a streetlight. It was indistinct, cloaked in shadow, yet David felt a visceral chill wash over him. This wasn't just paranoia. He was sure that figure was watching them. He had to shake the feeling. "Look, Jake," he stammered, pointing at the figure. But when Jake turned, it was gone. "What was it?" Jake asked, voice quaking. "Just a trick of the light," David replied, trying to sound reassuring. But doubt gnawed at him deeply. Suddenly, something loud and metallic punctured the stillness, a screeching sound like something being dragged along the ground. David slammed on the brakes, the tires screaming against the asphalt as the world careened into chaos. He turned to see what had happened. "Dad, what is it?" Jake's fear exploded in his tone, and David's gut twisted. There it was again, a glint of something sharp reflecting the light from his headlights. An overturned metal trash can rattled, spilling debris onto the gravel. But as David caught sight of movement amidst the rubbish, the weight of dread settled like a stone in his stomach. "Stay in the car, Jake. Lock the doors," he commanded, heart pounding as he felt fear emanating from his son. "What are you going to do?" Jake asked, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. "I'm going to see what that is." As he stepped outside, an eerie silence enveloped him, heavy and stifling. Shadows danced, and he felt that watchful presence again, like a predator honing in on its prey. The world shrank down to a dull heartbeat as he edged closer. From the corner of his eye, he spotted a tattered envelope lying among the wreckage. A part of him urged to turn back, retreat to the safety of the car. But another voice whispered for answers. David reached down, and as he picked up the envelope, a gust of wind rushed past him, carrying with it an unsettling whisper that made him freeze. The air turned electric. It was then that he heard it. Clicking sounds, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from behind him. His blood turned to ice. In one swift motion he whipped around, heart racing as shadows shifted against the backdrop of trees lining the road. Someone was there, hidden just beyond the edges of the flickering light. "Jake!" David shouted, but could he really protect him from what approached? The night had begun to unmask its secrets, and David felt the weight of darkness closing in. One final moment of clarity cut through the chaos. Had he just made a grave mistake in sending that last desperate text? "Run!" he roared, adrenaline surging as panic ignited within him. But Jake was still strapped in the car. David had opened Pandora's box, and now they were both at the mercy of the unknown. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a face he didn't recognize, eyes wide and glimmering with intent. And with that, David's world began to spiral. What horrific truth lay behind that face? What danger lingered in the silence? David's heart thundered in his chest as the figure fully emerged, a silhouette against the dim interior of his car. The flickering light only half revealed the features, but the intent in those eyes was unmistakable. Fear twisted inside him, turning his stomach. He had seconds, no more. "Jake!" he shouted again, but his voice was hoarse, almost lost to the night. He darted back toward the car, heart racing, but the shadows shifted, blocking his path. The clicking intensified, echoing through the still air, like nails on a chalkboard. "Get out of the car!" a voice called, gravelly and cold. David's pulse quickened. "Stay inside, Jake," he commanded, racing back, every instinct screaming to protect his son. He slammed the driver's door shut to create a barrier between them. "Who are you?" David demanded, trying to sound steady, though his voice betrayed him. The figure stepped closer into the light, revealing a man dressed in dark, tattered clothes, face partially hidden by a hood. His gaunt features were shadowy but sharp, eyes reflecting a glimmer of something almost feral. "You don't need to know my name. Just hand over the boy." "No," David refused, desperation hardening his resolve. He couldn't let this man take Jake. Suddenly, the stranger moved, lunging towards the passenger side, and David acted without thinking. He grabbed a metal pipe from the debris on the ground, gripping it like a lifeline. The sound of clanging metal filled the air as he swung the pipe toward the intruder, the weight of the moment slowing time, but the figure dodged. With an unnatural swiftness, he slipped into the shadows, his laughter echoing off the trees. "You think you can protect him? You don't even know what you're facing." Each word twisted like a knife. David felt the iron grip of fear tighten around his throat. He glanced at Jake through the windshield, saw his son's wide, terror-stricken eyes staring back at him, and a fierce protectiveness ignited within. David's mind raced. He had to be smarter than this man. "Jake, I need you to listen to me. Grab anything you can and be ready." "Dad, I'm scared." Jake's voice trembled, but David saw the determination flicker. "Me too, but we have to stay strong, all right?" David kept his eyes on the figure, still lurking in the flickering shadows. Each second felt like an hour as he waited for a move, a sign that would dictate his next action. Then the figure was back, emerging from the darkness, a wild look in his eyes. "It's all over, David. There's nowhere to run." How did he know his name? David felt a chill sweep through him. Every hair on his body stood on end. "What do you want?" David spat, holding the pipe defensively. "What I want is not for you to understand. Just know this, you're in over your head. And once I reveal the truth behind that text you sent, It won't just be me you'll need to worry about. The words hung thick in the air, and David's heart sank. What text? He hadn't told Jake about any text. What did this man know? I'll show you, the figure taunted, pointing to David's phone, still buzzing with alerts. Your wake-up call is coming. Suddenly there was a loud crash, metal scraping against metal, and something dark flew past him. David flinched, adrenaline surging. He saw Jake's hand thrust out, holding a flashlight, beaming it toward the man. The next moment felt suspended in time. The stranger's eyes narrowed on the light, the intensity shifting. David seized the opportunity, closing the distance before the man could react, swinging the pipe hard. But a split second too late. The figure slipped back, drawing a wicked knife that glinted in the light. You really shouldn't have done that. His words faded into the night, tension loaded like a spring ready to snap. David's resolve hardened. There was no backing down now. With everything on the line, he had to confront whatever horror waited in that text. Jake, get ready to run. He shouted, the urgency rising. And in that chilling moment, the real terror of the night seeped into their very bones, enveloping them in its darkness. What was it about the text that frightened this man so much? What had David unwittingly invited into their lives? The evening had just turned deadly, and there was no telling who or what might come next. The night twisted around them, the shadows growing thicker as the figure's presence loomed. David's grip tightened on the pipe, his knuckles white against the metal. Jake's flashlight beam danced wildly, casting frantic flashes that momentarily revealed snippets of the scene. The trees rustling, the dim outline of David, the grinning figure. Each flicker felt like a countdown. Jake, stay calm, David urged, trying to keep his voice steady. No matter what happens, don't panic. But panic was already creeping into Jake's eyes. David caught sight of his son's trembling hands, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. A sense of urgency surged through him. He couldn't let fear win. They had to act, to fight back before it was too late. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward. David swung the pipe with all his strength, but the man was a ghost slipping through air, his form twisting into a blur. With a swift, disarming movement, the stranger dodged low, and the pipe missed its mark, clanging against the pavement with a deafening ring. David's heart raced as the realization hit this man was no mere thug. He was calculated, ruthless, and utterly unpredictable. Why no, it's amusing how you think you can save him, the man taunted, circling them like a predator assessing its prey. You're a father, sure, but how well do you really know your son? What the hell are you talking about? David spat back, fury and confusion intertwining in his chest. Jake flinched at his father's outburst, eyes flitting between the potential violence unfolding and the darkness surrounding them. Dad, what is happening? Who is he? Before David could answer, the figure lunged again, this time with terrifying speed. David barely sidestepped in time, but his movement sent him crashing into the car, the metal creaking under his weight. Get back, Jake! He shouted, forcing himself to stay focused, adrenaline fueling his resolve. The man's wild laughter echoed as he straightened, wiping imaginary dust from his sleeve. You should have thought this through. You really have no idea, do you? Just think about that text. Who else could be hunting you right now? David's mind reeled. Had Jake's curiosity about his mother's absence summoned danger? Had he unwittingly drawn the attention of something sinister? The weight of every question hung over him like a dark cloud, suffocating and heavy. Focus, David, he thought, shaking off the doubts. He couldn't show fear. Jake, we have to get away from here. But before he could take another step, his phone pinged again, its brightness stinging his eyes. Against all odds he reached for it, realizing the notifications were relentless reminders of the unknown that had dragged them into this nightmare. The stranger grinned wickedly, eyes flashing at the sight of David's phone. Ah, the famous text. I think I'll be the one holding on to this until you're ready to give up what I seek. Through the panic, determination surged. David needed Jake safe, and he needed answers. Let us do this, he rallied, spinning the pipe to steady himself. You want a fight? I'll give you one. Jake's breath caught in his throat, but something in his father's voice steadied him. The fear was still there, palpable, but so was the bond between them. The figure raised the knife, the moonlight glinting off its blade as he charged. David braced for impact, adrenaline flooding his system. But in that split second, clarity struck. As the blade glinted like a snake ready to strike, another loud crash echoed the unmistakable sounds of footsteps, and then a sharp, anguished yell pierced the night. Someone's coming. Time seemed to freeze. Every nerve in David's body screamed as he whipped his head toward the noise. Had their salvation arrived? Or was it simply another wave of horror crashing down? The figure hesitated, an uncertain look crossing his gaunt face. "If you want your son, you'll have to choose now," he shouted, his tone swirling with an edge of madness. David's heart fought to keep beating, questions spiraling. He had to protect Jake. But what had he really unleashed with that text? What was the truth that hung between them like a vicious storm, waiting to be unleashed? He stood there, hands trembling, knowing only that whatever came next would change everything. And as the confrontation loomed, he wondered, would they survive the night? The footsteps grew louder, echoing off the pavement like an advancing army. David's heartbeat surged, pounding fiercely in his ears. The figure's grin faltered, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. In that moment, David saw an opening. Jake now, behind the car. He shouted, urgency pouring from him as he pushed his son to safety. They needed distance, and they needed it fast. Jake stumbled back, adrenaline fueling his movements. He tucked behind the vehicle just in time, heart racing. David could barely catch a breath. The cold night air burned in his lungs, mixed with the fear clawing at his insides. The stranger seemed to consider his options, tension twisting around them like a noose. "You think you can just run away?" he sneered. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." He seemed ready to pursue, but the approaching footsteps changed everything. A shadow broke through the trees, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a predatory grace. David squinted through the darkness, trying to discern if the newcomer was friend or foe. A twisted sense of dread coiled in his stomach as he pictured the worst outcome. "Get ready," he barked to Jake, positioning himself between his son and the oncoming threat. The flashlight flickered, the beam illuminating the woods just enough to reveal another figure emerging from the darkness. This one looking formidable, with a face carved in stone. "Who the hell are you?" the stranger with the knife spat, his tone dripping with disdain. "Put the weapon down, Claude," the new figure commanded, voice steady and unwavering. "This isn't the time to mess around." David's mind spun. Claude? What kind of name was that for someone so menacing? The situation felt like it was pulling tighter, every second charged with lethal potential. "Why do you bring him here?" Claude growled, his gaze shifting from David to the newcomer. "He's a nobody. You don't have to protect someone who can't even defend himself." "I think you're wrong about him," the newcomer said coolly, stepping further into the light. David caught a glimpse of something, a badge clipped to the waist of the stranger. A chill washed over him. "Are you a cop?" David shouted, grasping at the last strands of hope. "More like a messenger," the officer replied, looking at David with a strange intensity. "But there's a larger game at play. The text you received? It's a compass, a guide, but you have to trust it, David." David's heart sank. There was no comfort in the enigma unfolding. He couldn't understand the implications of those words, but he sensed a weight pressing down upon him. Could he trust this newcomer? "Enough of this," Claude shrieked, snapping David back to the moment. He lunged, knife glinting under the moonlight, but the officer was quicker, heavy footfalls thudding against the ground as he moved to intercept. A flash of motion, a blur, and then the officer wrestled Claude to the ground, sending the knife skittering away into the dark. David's breath caught, hope igniting into fierce determination. "Jake, stay behind me," he glowered, stepping towards the chaos. But just as he steadied himself, the sound of sirens wailed on the horizon, sharp, accusatory, promising chaos to come. Claude writhed under the officer's grip, eyes wide with panic. "You have no idea what you're walking into. This goes beyond just you." David felt the tension shift again. The urgency of their situation hung in the air, heavier than ever. "What does he mean?" he demanded, anger curling his fingers into fists. "What's coming?" The officer's grip tightened on Claude, his eyes scanning the darkness around them. "We need to move. This is just the beginning, David. Your text, it was only the first step into a web of danger." As sirens closed in and Claude squirmed beneath the weight of truth, David's mind whirled with the realization. The night was far from over, and every moment brought them closer to the unknown. "What is happening?" David shouted, voice raw with fear. "What do we need to do?" But before the officer could respond, a piercing scream shattered the stillness, slicing through the tension like glass, leaving David breathless. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Jake and pulling him toward the trees. "We have to get out." And amid the chaos, a new question took form in David's mind. In a world turned upside down, who could he really trust? Branches whipped against David's face as he pushed deeper into the woods, the sound of chaos fading but the weight of dread growing heavier. Jake struggled to keep up, his small legs pumping frantically, fear etched across his face. "Dad, what is happening?" Jake's voice cracked like a twig in the tension, and it tore through David's chest. He glanced back, panting. His heart raced, not just from the sprint, but from the unsettling uncertainty of what lay behind them. "Stay close. We'll figure it out," David urged, urgency flaring in his gut. He tried to reassure his son with his tone, but his own mind spun, questioning everything. Did Claude really know something? Was the officer truly there to help? Or was this all just a trap? Another layer of danger wrapped around them. In the darkness, the towering trees felt like watchful giants, closing in on them. The sirens' wails grew nearer, echoing ominously in the snatches of the night. Lights flickered on the road, crimson and blue chaos threading through the branches, illuminating their escape path, but also exposing them to whatever lurking threats rested in the shadows. Sweat trickled down David's back as he kept glancing over his shoulder. "What about the officer?" Jake panted, bravery shouting beneath his fear. It broke David's heart. How had he put his son in this situation? "I don't know," David hissed, voice strained. "We just need to get away." They pushed deeper into the thicket. It was a risk venturing further from the road, but it also gave them cover. David's thoughts raced. He needed to find a way to contact someone, to call for help. He could feel the adrenaline building up like a coiled spring, and they had to release it somehow. A rustle overhead made them freeze. David strained to listen, but all that could be heard was the pounding of their own hearts, a synchrony of dread. Do you think they'll find us?" Jake's voice trembled and David instinctively crouched low, wrapping his arm protectively around his son. "I won't let that happen," David whispered fiercely, though doubt knotted in his stomach. What if they weren't alone? What if Claude had friends out here tracking them through the dark? Suddenly, a crack sounded in the distance, followed by voices that sent ice skittering down David's spine. They were coming. He could feel it, the tension, the danger pulling tighter. "We should move. Find a safe place," David urged, leading Jake away from the noise, deeper into the shadows where they might have a moment's reprieve. Then, a harsh voice broke through the stillness, shimmering with malice. "You can't hide forever, David." The moment turned electric, a bolt of fear coursing through David's veins. Who is that?" Jake whispered, eyes wide, clinging tightly to David. "It's Claude." The name fell from David's lips like a curse. Why is he saying my name? Jake's innocence twisted something deep in David's heart. He had to protect his boy, keep him safe at all costs, but how could he shield Jake from the grim shadows of their reality? "Listen to me. If you see a way to run, you take it and don't look back," David said, his voice low and urgent. "I'll hold them off." "You have to know," Jake protested, tears brimming in his eyes. "We stick together." But before David could respond, the rustling grew louder, and the voice echoed again through the trees. "You think you can escape the game? You're only making it worse for yourself." "Jake, please." David's plea dripped with desperation. Just as he turned to reassure his son, the trees parted and a silhouette emerged, lit only by the blinding glow of a nearby patrol car. It was the officer, sweat beading on his brow, but his eyes held fire. "This way," he shouted, waving them over. Without thinking, David grabbed Jake's hand and sprinted towards the officer, the air thick with uncertainty. "Trust him," David muttered under his breath, echoing the officer's earlier words. But as they rounded the bend, the growing figure loomed closer. Claude, grinning wickedly, cut off their escape, and in that moment, something clicked in David's mind. Was this a trap? Did the officer bring them to a dead end? "Get behind me," David shouted, stepping in front of Jake. But the looming dread felt like a suffocating cloud. Claude raised a finger, smirking maliciously. Welcome to the real game, David. You'll soon understand your choices and their consequences. As the oppressive night air thickened around them, David's fear morphed into fury. He took a step forward, ready to fight back, but the horror of the situation clung to him, twisting his resolve. And just as hope seemed to flicker out, a sudden explosion of light shattered through the woods, bringing with it the roar of chaos. What now? David thought, heart racing yet again. But as the dust settled, the truth echoed in the air. The night was only beginning, and it might just end in a way David had never anticipated. Would they escape the growing darkness? Or was this just the first step into a nightmare? David's mind raced like a wild river. The chaos hung thick in the air as the patrol car lights swirled around them, casting eerie shadows that danced like specters in the trees. He could hear the distant sound of more sirens, more voices closing in. What is happening? Jake's voice cracked, fear leaking through his brave facade. Just stay right here, David breathed, glancing nervously from the officer to the figure of Claude. The tension snapped the air around them, and he felt the desperate need to act, to make a choice that would keep them alive. David, Claude called again, the sweetness of his voice a trap. You don't really believe this man will save you, do you? Remember, it's all just a game. The officer's eyes, normally steady, flickered with uncertainty. I'm here to help, but you need to trust me. We can get out of this. Don't listen to him. Claude sneered, stepping forward. He's the one who got you into this mess. David stood frozen, heart pounding. A wave of emotions battered him: anger, fear, and protectiveness clashed inside him like a brewing storm. He couldn't shake the feeling that all of it was orchestrated. The officer's frantic gestures, the bizarre appearance of Claude, everything felt wrong. With a sudden burst of clarity, David made a decision. He squeezed Jake's hand tighter. We're going to run, Jake. Follow me and don't look back. David, wait. The officer pleaded, reaching out as they bolted toward the darkness of the woods. You're making a mistake. But David could hardly hear him over the thudding of his own heart. He pushed forward through the underbrush, branches scraping his skin like angry fingers, desperately trying to distance themselves from the open space where Claude and the officer waited. Dad, I'm scared, Jake panted heavily, his little legs struggling to keep up. Just keep going. We'll find a way out, David urged, even though his own stomach twisted with a mix of dread and determination. He focused on the path ahead, each step a heartbeat of hope against the backdrop of chaos. Then, an explosion of sound erupted behind them. Gunshots rang out, sharp and crackling in the night like thunder, jolting David's pulse. No, he gasped, pulling Jake closer, fearful of the growing danger they'd invited by running. He wanted to believe it was the officer shooting at Claude or vice versa, but without knowing who was truly on their side, the fear clawed at his throat. Keep running, Jake, he shouted, their fear now a living thing propelling them forward. They stumbled into a small clearing, moonlight spilling around them like a blanket of safety. But it felt hollow. Dad, Jake whispered, voice trembling. What if we can't escape? What if they get us? David knelt to meet Jake's eyes. We will find a way. We always do. But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him like a starving beast. He had never felt so cornered, so helpless, as if the very trees conspired against him. They spotted an old shack, half hidden by foliage. In there. Quick, David urged, pulling Jake toward the door. They stumbled inside just as another shot rang out, the crack echoing against the walls. Inside, dust motes floated in the dim light, and the scent of damp wood enveloped them. David pressed his back against the door, feeling the tremor of his pulse echoing against the thin wooden structure. What is happening, Dad? Jake's voice was small, frightened. I don't know, buddy. David's voice came out rasped, raw with panic. But we need to figure out what to do next. Suddenly, a whispering breeze curled around them, as if the night itself had come to deliver a message. You think you can hide? Claude's voice taunted yet again, distant yet omnipresent. David's heart sank. But then a footstep on the porch made him freeze. It wasn't he, Claude, or was it? As the door rattled slightly, David's throat tightened. Who was out there now? Get ready, he whispered to Jake, the fear transforming into a palpable urgency, as he fumbled for anything that could be used as a weapon. The shack creaked ominously, shadows swirling in the corners. And just When David thought they might be forced out into the open again, a low, rumbling voice boomed from outside. "I know you're in there. Who is it?" David whispered, gripping his son tighter. "Only the beginning of the end," the voice growled. His stomach plummeted. Then the door burst open and darkness poured in, revealing the face of someone David never expected to see. "Everything's about to change," the figure said, a wicked smile creeping across their face. As David's throat clenched, one question rang louder than the chaos outside. Who was really playing the game? The door swung wide and David's heart raced. The figure stepping into the shack was no stranger. It was Sarah, his wife. Her hair was wild and she looked disheveled, a stark contrast to the composed woman he remembered. "Sarah!" David exclaimed, the name spilling from his lips like a lifeline. "What are you doing here?" "David, listen to me," she urged, casting nervous glances outside. "They know we're here. We don't have much time." The warmth of relief twisted into dread as her words sank in. "Who knows?" he demanded, trying to reconcile the reality he was facing. "Who's after us?" "Claude," she said breathlessly. "He's not just playing tricks anymore. He's pulled people into our lives." "What? How could you, David?" "Now is not the time to question. I came to find you because I couldn't just stand by any longer." Her eyes glistened with urgency, and he could see the fear shimmering behind her determined facade. "We thought we were safe," he said, holding Jake tighter. The child was trembling, confusion etched on his face. He didn't fully understand, but the fear in the adults was palpable, wrapping around him like a thick fog. "Are you in league with him?" David's words tasted bitter. "No. I was trying to protect you." But now she hesitated, swallowing hard, as though the weight of her secrets threatened to crush her. "I tried to tell you before. The night he first came to the house I didn't want you to panic." David felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Anger, sorrow, betrayal, and beneath it all, the fierce love he held for her and Jake. "You should have trusted me. We've lost too much time. If Claude finds us together he'll use it against us." A loud crash echoed from outside, the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. Jake flinched, pressing his small body into David's side. "Shua," David hissed, his commanding voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. He felt like a puppet, strings being tangibly pulled by an unseen force. "What do we do?" "Follow me. We need to get out of here." The words were barely out of her mouth when the shack trembled with another fierce impact. Someone was trying to break down the door. "We won't last long here," Sarah shouted, grabbing Jake's hand while looking at David, her eyes pleading. Just as David nodded, prepared to follow, a chilling voice echoing outside demanded, "I know you're in there. You can't hide from me." "Claude," David murmured, the name tasting bitter. He glanced around the small space, seeing little but an old table, tools rusted and forgotten in the corner. They didn't have much time. No window to escape through, no back door to use. They were trapped and running out of options. "David, we must make a stand. We can't let him take us." Sarah pushed, her voice filled with a fierce determination. Before he could respond, a wild crash sent splinters flying as the door burst open. A figure stepped in, half lit by the moonlight filtering through the entrance. "Surprise!" Claude grinned, his presence oozing malevolence. His laugh reverberated against the walls, a chilling melody that crawled under David's skin. In that moment David realized there was no choice left. Fear clawed at him, but alongside it, a cold fury ignited, burning brighter than the uncertainty clouding their situation. "Let us end this," David declared, his voice stronger than before. Then the room fell silent, except for the sound of Claude's breathing as he stepped forward, eyes gleaming with malice. "Ah, but it's just the beginning. You have no idea what I've planned." As claustrophobic tension gripped the air, David's resolve hardened. Each second felt stretched to its limit. They were closer than ever to finding out just how deep this twisted game ran. And with that, a chilling question hung in the air. Would they survive the last play of this deadly charade? The tension in the air crackled like electricity, and David's heart raced with raw determination. He could feel the weight of his family's lives perched on the precipice of chaos. Claude stepped further into the shack, shadows sliding over his features, an unholy glint in his eyes. "Let us see how this ends, shall we?" "Get back!" David shouted, pushing Jake and Sarah behind him, the protective instinct surging through him like a tidal wave. He tightened his grip on a rusty pipe. He picked up from the floor his only chance against the unpredictable danger that loomed before them. Claude chuckled darkly, oozing confidence that dripped like poison. You think you can fight me? You're lost in a game far beyond your control. It was never about just you. The air grew thick with despair, a suffocating blanket pressing down on them. David searched behind Claude, hoping to find escape or an ally. But all he saw was encroaching despair. Shadows danced in the moonlight, spinning tales of chaos yet undone. David's thoughts flared with worry. Was there no avenue left? He couldn't let fear seep into his son's heart. Listen, we need to stand united. David spoke firmly, glancing back at Jake, who appeared all too small next to the menacing figure in front of them. Stay with me no matter what happens. Can you do that, buddy? Jake nodded, fear and determination flickering in his eyes like candlelight in a storm. Good, David breathed. And you, Sarah, we fight this together. Together, she echoed, a fierce glint in her eyes that reminded him of the woman he had fallen in love with. Suddenly, Claude lunged forward, catching David off guard. The sheer force of his reckless advance sent David staggering back. But instinct took over. He swung the pipe. With a sickening crunch, it hit Claude, who stumbled sideways but recovered too quickly. Instead of retreating, he simply grinned and straightened, revealing a darkness that seemed to seep from him. You really think this will end well for you? Claude taunted, voice dripping with condescension. Before David could react, Claude drew a shiny blade, lunging with the swiftness of a viper. The knife glimmered, eager for blood, ready to cut through the thread of hope that David grasped with all his being. In that split second, clarity struck. We need to confuse him, David shouted, adrenaline coursing through him like fire. Jake, find anything you can throw. Right. Jake scrambled, diving behind an old wooden crate as he fumbled to grab an assortment of tools, casting them against the walls in the chaos, creating noise, distraction, anything to divert Claude's focus. David's heart thundered as he positioned himself parallel with Jake, positioning the pipe as Claude charged. Now, Sarah, he commanded, daring Claude to take one step further. With a swift kick, Sarah sent a plank of wood crashing down, causing Claude to falter. The moment hung suspended, his confidence wavering for just a heartbeat as David took his chance. He lunged forward, a furious cry escaping him as he planted the pipe with force against Claude's side. It was everything they had, taking advantage of their unity, their shared purpose. Claude fell to the floor, disoriented but still grunting, pulling himself against the ground. Now, move! David barked at Jake and Sarah, dragging them toward the door. The urge to flee coursed through him. The fear of whatever Claude might still have lurking in his twisted mind propelled them towards freedom. But just as they reached the entrance, a bright flash of light exploded outside, illuminating the darkness in blinding brightness. A crowd had gathered, flashing lights of police cars reflecting off eager faces backed by authoritative voices. Get down! Move away from the area! Panic seized David as he turned back toward Claude, who struggled to rise again, angry eyes flickering with resolve. The scuffle outside pulsed with sudden urgency. David! Now! Sarah pulled at him, eyes wide with alarm. Realization screamed within him this was their moment. Let us go! He shouted, adrenaline sealing their fates together as he dashed into the night, ducking low beside Jake and Sarah, forcing his legs to carry them further away. Outside, the rush of cool air reminded David what he fought for: his family. They sprinted past frantic officers, wisdom igniting within him. He had to lead them to safety beyond the horizon of fear. As they burst into a clearing, David risked a glance back. Claude's pained howl echoed behind them, a cruel reminder of what they had just escaped, and perhaps a shadow of what still lurked ahead. But here, amongst the trees whispering promises of safety, David felt hope bloom despite the darkness. They could redefine their path together. We made it, he breathed, looking down at Jake, who seemed more resilient than ever. Dad? Jake's voice vibrated with uncertainty. Are we safe? David knelt, taking Jake's small hands in his own. We will be. Together we will always be safe. Sarah wrapped her arms around them, a tremor of relief pulsing through her. They were alive. Eras of misunderstandings could drift away like ashes in the wind. But as dawn pulled the night away, a lone message buzzed in David's pocket, a chilling reminder that danger seldom leaves you unscathed. Breathing deeply, he understood this might be the end of one battle, but what lay ahead would require all of their strength. And with that, they turned into the morning light, together yet again, ready to face whatever came next. But remember, this isn't just our story, it's a journey that we all share. Each of you here, following this tale into the light of day. Now I need you to hit that subscribe button immediately. Don't let the next adventure slip through your fingers. Smash that like button now to keep this story alive. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Claude, the night, everything. Your voices matter in this journey. And if you know someone who needs to see this conclusion, don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends. Together, let us build this community, united by the stories we share and the journeys we face.